morning and welcome to Extra Extra, your weekly LGBTQIA+ news roundup. I wanted to create this series because I know that being LGBTQ+ often means that reading the news is other people debating your very existence, and that can take a toll on you mentally, psychologically, emotionally. And so, if you don't want to do the deep dive yourself, but you do want to stay informed, then this series is for you. I do live in the UK, and for that reason, my perspective will be Eurocentric. However, I'll do my very best to cover as much global important news as I can and keep it as international as possible. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Starting off with some good news. LaFonza Butler is set to become the first openly gay black congresswoman in the US Congress. Once she's in office, she'll also be the only black woman in the US Congress, and she'll be the first openly queer person representing the state of California. Those are big, important, historical milestones to be hit. I do think that a country whose population is 51% women and roughly 14% black people should have more than one congressperson representing that particular demographic. In my opinion, a democracy should accurately represent all of its population, and so while these news deserve to be celebrated, the US still has a ways to go. Let's hop over to Australia, where the state of New South Wales has pledged to ban conversion therapy by the end of this year, following in the footsteps of other Australian states, Victoria, Queensland, and the ACT. I want to take a quick moment to talk about conversion therapy and how the term therapy, in my eyes, implies something positive, right? Therapy is something that is meant to help you, it's meant to heal you. Conversion therapy isn't any of those things. Conversion therapy is violent and deeply traumatizing to the young individuals forced to undergo it, and it is also proven to be ineffective and cause nothing but pain, trauma, deeply rooted shame. Nobody would subject another person that they love to what goes on at conversion therapy if they knew what exactly was going on there. It should be outlawed everywhere. So yay, New South Wales, it's about time. In Japan, a family court in Hamamatsu has declared an existing Japanese law which requires transgender people to undergo surgical procedures in order to be able to change their gender markers on their documentation unconstitutional. Now, this is only a local family court. This doesn't currently change anything about the jurisdiction in Japan. However, this is an important ruling and it has the potential to move on to a national level. On the 5th of October, the Mauritius Supreme Court has finally decriminalized homosexuality, with the court stating that the existing law which is being replaced hails from 1838 and is a result of British colonialism. We have reached the point in this video where I will talk about what's going on in UK politics. For those of you not based in the UK, or if you haven't been keeping up with the news, there has been a recent downpour of hate and demonization of the trans community by the UK government. Starting with the UK Health Secretary Steve Barclay stating he wants to ban trans women from female-only hospital wards. Last year, an organisation called Translucent conducted a study to find out whether there had ever been any complaints about trans women in female-only spaces in the National Health Service. Not a single complaint has been filed in the history of the NHS. It is factually a non-issue. However, it has gotten a lot of traction, and when I get this right, so I'm reading it. The day after those comments, the UK's Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, held a speech at the Conservative Party's annual conference, in which he said, "A man is a man, and a woman is a woman, and that's just common sense." This statement received a huge round of applause. Watching this on video is, to me, shocking. What really irks me, though, is the fact that these are intelligent people. They're evil, don't get me wrong, but they're not dumb. These are intelligent people pretending not to understand the difference between gender and biological sex in order to stir up hate against an already marginalized community to distract from their many failings as a political party. The Conservative Party has been in office for, 13 years? And the country has not been in such a dire state since 40 years ago. This hate that they're stirring against the transgender community is only a distraction to get people's minds off of all the other things that are currently not going right in the UK. There was then a lot of backlash in support of the trans community following all of these comments. There were protests in London, both on the 10th and the 11th of October, in which people peacefully gathered, vented their frustrations, spoke about what it actually means to be trans and what it means to be demonized by the government so publicly. One of the protesters put the results of the government's comments against trans people better than I ever could. So I'm going to play it for you here.
Whenever there is a financial crisis, the first thing that a government does is tell you to fear a population. What is this an attempt to distract us from? Hating trans people will not pay your gas bill, your increasing gas bill. Hating trans people will not decrease levels of sexual violence against women. Because men don't need a wig and a disguise. All you are doing by hating trans people is watching those suicide numbers go up. And that's it.
On the UK version of Big Brother, one of the contestants, Hayley, came out to the rest of the group as trans a few days ago. And in response to that, the other people on the show proceeded to share their pronouns and make it a safe space for Hayley. Following Hayley's coming out, another contestant called Jordan came out as bi. Previously, another contestant called Matty was already talking about what it meant to grow up gay, and contestant Jenkin had already spoken about being gay in his introductory video. I also learned, this was news to me, that Big Brother historically has been incredibly inclusive, and, obviously the people going on that show are subject to scrutiny and opinions from the public, and they won't always be positive. But I thought it very interesting that in light of all of the hatred that's being spewed against trans people by our political leaders, there has been such great support of queer people of all identities on one of the biggest TV formats in the UK. Portugal has its first trans Miss Portugal. This week, a young woman called Marina Machetti made history as the country's first transgender Miss Universe contestant, joining Ricky Valerie Collet, Miss Netherlands, who is also a transgender woman. And both of them will be competing at the Miss Universe pageant in El Salvador in November. The USA's National Hockey League has barred players from using rainbow tape on their hockey sticks. Earlier this year, they already outlawed rainbow colours on players' jerseys. To an extent, I can understand that. That might be distracting. A jersey on a big hockey player, they will stand out. However, knowing how many adverts there are for whatever brands on the ice, there's so many logos and colours and things, and the rainbow tape on the hockey sticks mostly is at the very bottom. I don't know what that thing is called. Thing that actually hits the puck. Because it's such a small area and is so close to the ground, I think calling that a distraction is, in my personal opinion. Unfortunately, the other talking point I have for the sports segment is also bad news. Alaska joins 22 other US states in banning transgender students from joining the sports team of the gender they identify with. And they're enforcing this by banning teams in which they do allow transgender students to participate in the sport. They're banning those teams from competing. In my opinion, the only thing that banning trans students from participating in the sports that they love, because that is what essentially the outcome is. You can't play American football by yourself, or baseball, or soccer, or volleyball, and a transgender girl isn't going to join the male team, and vice versa. A transgender boy isn't going to join the girls' team. They just won't, because in order to join, they would then have to perform in the gender that makes them feel dysphoric, and they won't. And again, the only person that is going to really be affected by that is that trans student, their mental health, their self-worth. And knowing the suicidal rates of trans people, I think that's a huge crime against humanity. So shame on you, Alaska and the 22 other US states. A new study looked into homosexuality in animal species and found, which is completely unsurprising to me, that homosexuality is common among at least 1,500 animal species. Yeah, they've looked at all behavior that we would associate with sexuality, from physical intimacy to long-term pair bonding and raising young together. At least 1,500 animal species do engage in homosexual acts. The person that was leading this study, someone called Dr. Gomez, said that they hypothesize that homosexual behavior is aiding animals that live in social groups have better and more stable social relationships. And I just wanted to throw this in here. I'm actually glad that this is what the science segment is this week, because it is just the perfect clapback at anyone claiming that homosexuality is unnatural. We've got a slay of the week and a ew of the week. The slay of this week goes to Miss Toto, a drag queen and marine biologist who works in ocean wildlife protection. She's recently started doing her work in full drag, the whole shebang. There are pictures of her tagging sharks in full drag. She combines drag shows with ocean wildlife tours that they take tourists on, and combines fundraising for LGBT organizations with wildlife conservation. I just think that's amazing. And in an interview, she also said, you know, being black and being a drag queen and being queer, doing the work she does in full drag, you never know who you're going to inspire. Unequivocally, the ew of the week goes to UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Rishi, you are not a good person. But this week, you have taken the cake. And I would just like to publicly call you out for pretending to be dumber than you are, and for using a marginalized community as your scapegoat. You should know better. So enjoy this award. I hope you step into something slimy. I hope you step on a slug. This was my first ever video. I was pretty nervous filming this for no reason, because I am just in my home and I can do it again and edit it and whatever, but yeah. I hope you enjoyed watching this. If you've watched until the very end of my first ever video, thank you so much. Please tune in again next week. I'm going to make this a weekly series. I'm going to include all of my sources in the description if you want to have a deeper look into anything. I'm also going to include some mental health organizations and helplines in there as well. Yeah, thank you so much, and see you next week.